Yeah, we're live, and I'm already out of focus. Today I want to talk about a couple things. One, the video on the Elgin cams, all the sloppy stage cams are that's up. I put that up actually early this morning. So we have the sloppy stage 1, the 1.5, the 2, and the sloppy stage 3. And there are two cams in particular that I was excited about. We've run lots and lots of tests on the sloppy stage 2, obviously, and Matt's done a ton of stuff with that. They've run it hundreds of times probably. So it's been on the dyno a lot, and I've seen lots of comparisons. We've run that with versus a variety of different things. We've run it versus the stock cams. We've run it versus I've got videos up versus the Truck Norris cam. So we kind of know what that cam does. And I think Matt probably used that on the 8-for-8 thing that he did when he was trying to get the Mustang to run 8s for $8,000. It's a very, very cool project. So that one's kind of been done. What guys really wanted to know about more than anything was, I think, the sloppy stage 3. And I didn't know if that cam would fit, but people were telling me that it does and that they run it. So I never even checked piston valve clearance. We just put it in and gave it a couple of Hail Marys and hope for the best, and it worked fine. That cam, and one of the things that I'm kicking myself about is I didn't put the specs up on all the cams in the video, and I always do that, and I don't know why I neglected to do that in this video, but so that people know on the sloppy stage 1, 2, or 1.5, 2, and 3, what Elgin did was step up in lift and duration on those. So the sloppy stage 1 was 560 lift. The sloppy stage 2 was 575 lift. The sloppy stage 3, or the sloppy stage 2, was 585 lift, and the sloppy stage 4, 595. So the one, I keep labeling this as a 2, but it's a 1.5. And sloppy stage 3. Okay, so 560, 575, 585, and 595. They went up in duration, obviously, on all these cams too. The sloppy stage 1 was a 216, 220, and a 114 LSA. All of the others, the 1.5, the 2, and the 3, all had 112 LSAs. So all you tight LSA guys, please tell us that the LSAs are way too wide on these, and you need to have tighter LSAs. So we have 216, 220 on the sloppy stage 1. The sloppy stage 1.5, they went to a 220, 224. So they stepped up 4 degrees on both sides of that equation. And on the sloppy stage 2, we know that's a 228, 230. A little bit tighter, only a 2-degree split on the sloppy stage 2, which tends to help idle quality a little bit. And it tends to also make less power on the top. The sloppy stage 3 was a big step up from the sloppy stage 2, 10 degrees, a 238, 242. So we have, what do we have? A 4-degree split there, kind of like the others, kind of like the 1.5 and like the 1, but much more duration, still a 112 LSA and a bit more lift. And the reason that they could go up, if you look at these, the change in lift should help cam stability. Because as we go down in LSA, if we were to have higher lifts, it tends to make the cam less stable because it has a more aggressive ramp rate. So they did the right thing there, and I'm not the one that it should be telling them or can tell them how to make camshafts. Obviously, they recognize that and they know much more about camshafts than I'll ever know. But to give you guys an idea, that's why they do this. A really high lift, short duration cam has a really aggressive ramp rate, and it tends to make the thing less stable at RPM, which is not usually a bad thing, mostly because if you have a short duration camshaft, you're not spinning it really high anyways. You're not running a 208 or a 210 cam and trying to go to 8,000 RPM with it. So even if it has lots of lift in it and it's a 5,000 or 6,000 RPM cam, a lot of times you won't have trouble. But relatively speaking, if we're just looking at this generically, that's what tends to happen on these things. So let me know, what do you guys think? Were there any surprises? One of the things that I like I said, we've done a lot of testing on the sloppy stage 2 cam, but I hadn't done really any testing on any of the others, particularly the sloppy stage 3 cam, because I didn't think it would fit, but also the 1.5. So for me, the win in this test, in this video, is running the sloppy stage 3, and obviously, and other people already knew. They knew more than I did. They already knew that it would fit. They've already been running it, and they know that it makes good power. It's like I said, it's a big step up from the sloppy stage 2 cam, and we saw that in the results. I mean, the power gains were, they were pretty impressive. So I'll go to, this is I'm going to put all these up so I can reference them. So if we take a look at the dyno results here, we see above 5,000 RPM is kind of where we see the gains from these camshafts, and that's not unusual. Whenever we do cams and we start getting power gains, except changing from the stock cam to something else. And guys commented on that. I should have included the stock cam. I should have included the stock cam. I probably had enough time to run the stock cam on this combination too, because it would have been interesting to see what the stock cam makes on this combination with those trick flow heads. Obviously, it doesn't gain nearly as much with the trick flow heads as any stock cam, but I would put, given that this L33 with the 799 heads made 365, I would say it's going to be, somewhere in the 400 horsepower range, probably with a stock camshaft. I would guess maybe a little less than that. It might be that the heads, well, I honestly, I don't think that so somewhere between, I would say somewhere between 365 and 400 is where the stock cam is going to be. Probably below 400 with the stock cam and those trick flow heads. They're just not going to help us much with the stock cam, but we know that they're going to make more than the stock heads do. But at any rate, we see above 5,000 RPM, we see pretty big gains. And from the sloppy stage 1 cam, which made 452, we see 491 horsepower. Yeah, 490.8, 491 horsepower. So a pretty big jump up in power going from the sloppy stage 1 to the sloppy stage 3. The surprise one, or probably the one that I would more gravitate towards, is the sloppy one, is the 1.5. It did very well with this combination, and I like the fact that it made more power from 5,000 on up compared to the sloppy stage 1, and didn't really suffer stuff too much down low. Below 2,500, we would definitely see some power loss compared to the sloppy stage 1, and obviously compared to the stock cam as well. The stock cam is going to do pretty well down in that low RPM range, and it's going to be hard to beat that. We see that with the cams almost always. There's going to be a trade-off down low unless the cam is very, very mild. So that sloppy stage 1.5, I think I would almost always pick that over the sloppy stage 1. And then the 2 definitely loses power down low. We saw that it started, if you look at the torque curves, you see that it lost power all the way up to 3,500 compared to the sloppy stage 1. And then the sloppy stage 3 lost even more torque down low. And that would just tell you that, hey, look, when you see a drop down there like that in the torque curve, what that tells you is, hey, when you look at that, say, I need gear. you need gear, up until where that torque loss is, essentially. I mean, not all the way up there, but that's what it should tell you. When you see a big low speed torque loss, you start thinking, well, I can kind of make that up with stall converter and gears, and that's what that should tell you. Then you can take advantage of the area where the power is the same, and then where it's a lot more as we rev this thing out. These things went all the way out to 7,000 RPM, despite the fact that we had the early truck manifold, which was definitely holding things back. And then the other thing to look down there, and I mentioned this in the video, is when you are looking at these camshafts on a 5.3, sloppy stage 3 is going to need converter. It's going to make power at higher RPM. And also, if you're thinking about, hey, I want to run a turbo on this, well, I would run the smaller camshaft, because if you look down in that area too, in the area where I'm talking about, hey, this indicates that you probably need more converter, it also indicates that this is going to hurt spool up with the turbo. If it makes more low speed power down there, that's going to hurt spool up. We don't know to what extent, unless we really tested it with the size turbo that we have and the combination that we're running, but it's a really good indicator. It might be that it has enough torque to spool a turbo, your particular combination, like a smaller turbo, GT45 or GT35, that there's already enough there. But as we get into a bigger turbo, you'll see, and the problem is when you don't spool a turbo, the lack of torque there and then the lack of a spool kind of compounds itself. So you get a big loss in power there with a turbo because the turbo hasn't spooled up yet. So in that area where we're seeing the torque loss, those are all the things to look for. Or those are all the things to think about. Think about, I need a converter, and also it's going to hurt spool. That's why I normally recommend when we're talking about these turbo combinations, pick the smaller cam, because the power loss that you see at the top between a sloppy stage 1 or 1.5 or 2 and a 3, that's just boost. That's just another pound of boost. So the gain that you would get from, like, let's say the one that I would recommend would be the sloppy stage 1.5. So the difference in power between the 1.5 and the 3. So the 1.5 was 65 versus 91, less than 30 horsepower. That's going to be less than 1 pound of boost. So you have all the spool down low with the smaller cam, and then you had to run 1 more pound of boost. And then now you're making more than the sloppy stage 3 would make. So that's why I recommend smaller cams, is because that area in the curve down there, and then we can always get to the end of the flow rate of the turbo. All we have to do is just turn the boost up, and that's how that works. So we'll see how you guys are doing. Have you guys watched the video? Let me know. Over the okay, would you pick a sloppy stage 3 cam over the sloppy stage 1.5 cam for your 5.3 liter? And the showing you the changes in the power down low and then up top, this is on a 5.3 liter. It's on a 5.3 liter with a ported head too, which is going to tend to help the power gains up at the top. But here's something also to think about. If we did this test on a 4.8, we would see even greater changes down low, and the differences between the bigger cam and the smaller cam down low would be shifted out in RPM. So on the 4.8, it would want to make peak power at a higher engine speed, and also the losses that we get would go to a higher RPM down low. Essentially, what you indicating that what you would need is an even more stall converter, and boost response would be even worse on the 4.8 than it would on a 5.3. And conversely, on a 6.0, those things would all shift back the other way. So the crossovers would be earlier in the RPM range on a 6.2, or bigger on a 383 or a 408 or something bigger, would shift back the other way, and we'd be making peak power lower on the larger displacement motors. So cool stuff. That this should help all the sloppy guys. They've been wanting to see this for a really, really long time. And so I'll have some other comparisons coming up because we ran a bunch of, or we ran a couple of the Summit cams as well. So let's see how you guys are doing this morning. Waiting on an insurance adjuster. The Chevelle was hit on New Year's. Oh man, that's too bad. Getaway, what's going on? Staying 09. 5.7. We are live. So yeah, specs on the stage 3. I think I gave you all that stuff. Richard, I really appreciate all the help you've been given to us guys out there. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Happy to help. Who doesn't like a tight LSA? What do you think of a Chopper cam for an 0453, 203,000 miles on? That's a good cam. It did really well. It was kind of right there with the Truck Norris cam, which I think is a good cam. I think, although Brian says otherwise, I think that the Truck Norris and therefore the Chopper also, I think you need a little bit of a converter with that. Stage 3 The stage 3 fits piston to valve. I'm looking at a BTR NA3 232 236 at 50. Yeah, the stage 4 Brian Tooley LS3 cam also fits stock piston to valve, which is a pretty big cam. We ran that one as well. 14 thumbs up. Nice. We like to see that. You should always just say I need gear and converter anyway. They do help a lot. I mean, a converter, the right converter compared to a stock converter, especially if you're taking it to the drag strip, is a big help. And then gears also, if you go to a from a 3 series gear to a 4 series gear, you'll see a noticeable change. Sloppy stage 1.5 might be a good pick for a turbo. Yeah, I agree. Minimal torque loss down low, but breeze well up top. Yeah, it has all the things I think that you need. I mean, naturally, we can run a turbo with a stock cam too, or the one, or anything else. But I kind of like the power curve that one produces. I want to see how it compares to the truck BFD and the LS3 BFD. He woke up to the notification. Good. That's a good alarm clock, right? Nathan, what's your question? A 5.3 with a turbo. On a 5.3 with a turbo, I would usually pick the smaller cam. Sloppy stage 3 cam would be a big cam for a truck daily driver. I agree. It's not what I would pick for a daily driver. My cat wants to snuggle. I ran a sloppy stage 3 in my 91 Camaro with an LS157. Okay. With a carb and a 200 kit, and ran mid 6s in the 8th. Made great response on the bottle. Yeah, if you can, depending on how early you hit the nitrous, obviously you can pick up a lot of that low speed torque. Most guys don't hit a nitrous kit at 2,500 RPM, but you can. For low, let's see. So somebody asked how it stacks up against to the truck Norris. How does which one stack up to the truck Norris? I don't know which one you're talking about. I could have put the sloppy stage 2 and a TX48, but I'm glad a turbo. I'm sure it's a turbo 4.8, but I'm glad I chose a small truck cam. That's a better choice, I think. A sloppy stage 2 makes a lot of power, but I don't think it's a good choice on a 4.8. And I've been saying that since the first time I tested one. I voted yes because if I had a 5.3, it would probably be NA. It makes good NA power, and if you have a converter in it and you're going to the track and you're running to 7,000 RPM, it would make good power. Would you use a sloppy stage 2 or a 3 with a 799 head on the 6-liter? It depends not so much on that displacement, but what are you using it for? Are you daily driving it around? Then the milder cam might be good. Do you want all the power? Then a sloppy stage 3. Again, the cam choice, there's no absolute cam choice for any given combination, despite what people think. It's all up to you. What are you willing to put up with? What is the rest of your combination? Do you have a high stall speed converter? Do you have gears? Is the car light? Is the truck heavy? Are you concerned about idle quality or fuel mileage? Or do you want the chop? Do you want the lowest ET that you can possibly get, with the bigger cam? And then what is the priority of all those things? Let's say you answered yes to all of those. But now what's the priority of those things? How do you want them organized? And then what's important and what's not? I started assembling my 355 this morning. 3 years in the making. Well, good luck, man. Get it together. I'm going to be building a 400 in my garage here pretty soon. How do you feel about compound loading turbos into a supercharger? I have videos up where we've done that. We did that on a 03 Cobra, and we also did it on the 3800, and it works fine. At some point, the supercharger is just in the way of the turbos actually making power. But if you think about it this way, if you're just turbocharging the NA motor doesn't make nearly as much power as the supercharged combination does. So the supercharger will help spool the turbo up. Plus, it's a twin charge deal, which has lots of coolness factor to it. I've looked at the specs. How similar is a sloppy stage 3 to a truck Norris? A sloppy stage 3 is way bigger than a truck Norris. It's a completely different kind of cam. I ran a truck Norris on my 5.3 and did pretty good. Now swapping to a 6.0 with a 7875. With a truck Norris in a 6-liter, you could max out the flow rate of a 7875. Plus, it would be responsive. Best wake up call you've had this year. Nice. 706 trucks on this truck. You think you should flow enough for the chopper? 706 trucks on this truck. Do you think they flow enough for a chopper? Are you asking if those heads flow enough for a chopper? Any stock head works well with that camshaft. I was talking about the 5.3 and this pole is a turbo. If NA, yes. If turbo, no. No, the 5.3 is a NA one in this pole, but it doesn't matter really. Well, I guess it could if you want all the power NA. Has anyone else opted for a Trailblazer 4.2 stock converter for a mild stall upgrade on their 460s? That's a good question. Has anybody actually done that test? Have you swapped on the 4.2 converter for your 5.3 converter, I guess? Because I think the 4.8 might be a little different too. I think we've gone through this discussion before on how to upgrade the stock converters. Jason, so you're leaving at 3,200. Okay. That's a pretty high stall converter relative to a stock one. Let's see. Richard, does lobe separation mean anything? Yes, it means a lot. The big cams are not good on the street, Mike. I think I'm financially inept. I just bought a drive shaft adapter for the sprocket spline on my ZX6 to made it to a rear-wheel drive differential. Nice. Getting ready to install the China Sloppy Stage 2, and it came with lifters. Should I use them or the stock ones? I like the stock ones, and I wouldn't buy lifters. Would be something that I wouldn't buy from offshore, and I would be worried about the camshaft too. There's been lots of problems with these offshore cam ones. I like the chop, but hate the stall converter. Just pull one plug when you're cruising through the coffee and cars and coffee. Just curious, getting ready to install the China. Yeah, I think that right. Do we covered that. I'm new to the sport. How do I track data while at the track? Does anybody have any information for Dale? Does the 2010 Corvette have data logging on it where you can do track data? On a turbo car, I mean, does lobe separation help or not? Like 110 versus a 114? It depends on what are you only changing that? Do you have a camshaft that has the other specs that you want and you're just changing the lobe separation angle? Lobe separation angle tends to help power down low. It can, but depending on what the other specs are. Are the downsides of a 4-inch stroke LS worth the extra cubic inches in a boosted application? I don't know what the downsides are. You make more power and you make more torque on a 4-inch stroke. I normally don't recommend building a stroker if you have a turbo combination because the turbo can make all the power that you want. Do we know what size cam is the limit on stock pistons as far as clearance? Still trying to pick a cam for a turbo 6-liter. Yeah, if you're building a turbo 6-liter, you shouldn't be picking the biggest cam. You shouldn't be worried about piston to valve clearance because you should be putting a smaller cam than that in there. Just curious. Let's see. The 496 comp is near the limit. I don't think it is anymore. I'm going to put some cams in my test rig and see where we are. 4,500 stall. Yeah, that's a lot. You can run any cam that you want. I have a 400 small block in the garage. I've had for years. Are they worth building? Yeah, because it's 50 bigger than a 350. What, if any, is the difference in performance with stock short plug wires versus extended length? I don't know about under the dash. I don't know if I've run anything that long. We've run some fairly long ones on turbos just to get around, because the way that we had the exhaust configured, we had to go around the exhaust manifold. I mean, around the turbo and exhaust manifold and come from underneath. It doesn't do anything. Rich, it occurred to me yesterday that I spent more on ARP hardware at my 408 than you did for the entire Big Bang 6-liter. The entire Big Bang 6-liter was expensive because the heads and the cam and the intake. The short block was not costing that, next to nothing, but all the other things were fairly expensive. Had a transmission tunnel for my LS Swap 1998 Eclipse. Nice. I've never seen that. Got the micro squirt working. Congratulations, Turbo Center. That's a good feeling, right? When it fires up and works. I'm always excited when I hook up the fuel injection and the motor starts. Wrong LSA t-shirts coming soon. Yes. That should be a thing, right, Mike? That's perfect. In fact, I'm going to have Lisa make one of those. Which of those cams would you choose for a crew cab? Colorado with 410 gears, 4L60. It's getting built, stall converters, no problem. Well, are you wanting to make lots of power and run to 7,000 RPM with your 4L60? Because if it's a stock 4L60, it's probably not going to last long with a cammed 5.3. Maybe I missed it. Sloppy best cam or sloppy stage 2 on an NA. What's gonna better responsive? The best cam is smaller than the sloppy stage 2, so it will make more low speed power than the sloppy stage 2 will. Wonder how much more cam we can get away with from the 469. Well, all of these cams are bigger. The sloppy stage 3 is bigger than that 469 camshaft is, and the Brian Tooley Racing stage 4 LS3 cam is bigger. The Summit stage 4 cam, all those are bigger than that 469 cam. What's your personal favorite or top 2 favorite cams for boost? I don't have any. Choosing the cam, when you pick a camshaft, you pick it for a number of different reasons. I like running a stock cam, like a 5.3 with a stock cam in a daily driver truck works really, really well. If you want more cam because you want more sound and you want more power at the same boost level, that works well too. I salute all of those choices. Cam, I don't know what your question is. You got to be more specific. By the way, if you bolt on a 6-bolt aluminum heads to an iron LSX block before installing your Johnson low lash link bar lifters, you have to start over. But that's a learning experience, right? In my life, I focus on stick shift because I'm generally autocrossing or track or just have control of my RPM by my gearing. The trans, the low end doesn't matter to me. Yeah, you can a lot of times because you don't have a stall converter issue, you can get away with more camshaft in a manual trans. Colorado is a stock LH9 5.3. Chile, Colorado. So in your Colorado, if you want, again, the camshaft choice is going to be what kind of power curves do you want? That's why I showed you the stuff. That's why I do all the testing. L33 stock bottom end 799 heads, twin 72s. Would you run a sloppy stage 3? I would only run a sloppy stage 3 on a 5.3 if I was drag racing and wanted to run a lot of RPM and I had a lot of gear in it. I'm gonna try to make the LS2 2G all-wheel drive. That'd be cool. Yeah, Scott, ARP fasteners are not cheap. I like them. I always use them on at least the head bolts. I don't put them on the. I don't change the main stuff usually. Mud truck, 2.5 ton axles, 58 tires. That's a lot of stuff. Milled true, 61 stock intake, 90 mm body. Has a Mad Max cam. Needs something that makes power sooner. Brendan, do you know what a Mad Max cam? Do you know what the Mad Max cam specs are? I'm not familiar with the specs on that camshaft, so I just need the duration at 50 on that camshaft, and then I can tell you what to change to in terms of duration to make the power come on earlier. Oh, Turbo Century, you haven't started it yet? Well, you will be happy then when you start it. Let's see. Yeah, when you started, that will be good. That's always a good feeling. When I get to the point where I'm actually tuning and then making changes and tuning, that's my favorite part of dyno testing. What's good cam for a stock 06 LQ4 2500 HDUs for towing? I would put a Truck Norris style camshaft in that. Turbo Man, happy to help, man. Richard, in your opinion, what do you think will make more in a 6-liter, a sloppy stage 3, or a comp 469? I would say a sloppy stage 3 will make more power. I think. I mean, I have to compare them directly, but based on the fact that it has 7 degrees more intake duration, I would tend to think that would make a little bit more power. Drivability is not important. I had to drive my big block Dodge truck as a daily because my car was down. I only went back to the car to keep wear down. The 469 and 459 cams work well. We've tested them a lot, but I gotta test more stuff. Just looking for your opinion on that intake of my combo. I was told by buddies that the intake is killing my power. Just wondering. I don't know what my thoughts are. That's too vague of a question. Scott, you're tired of learning experiences? They're always expensive. Remember installing a micro squirt on a Fiero. The idle control was an adventure. Hey, life is an adventure. If you're building a truck from scratch, would you say it's easier to set up a manual transmission or automatic that requires a transcooler? I like manual transmissions, especially for testing on the chassis dyno. It makes life a lot easier so that we don't have to figure out how to the transmission and the converter is a programming the shift points that we want. A manual trans is really easy to run on a as long as the clutch is operating properly. A manual trans is really easy to run at the drag strip. It's also much easier for the combination on a chassis dyno to be repeatable with a manual trans because it just keeps doing the same thing. Temperature buildup in an automatic trans can affect the power output. The converter affects the shape of the curve. So I like a manual trans for that. But I mean, but an automatic at the track actually usually goes faster. Mad Max is a 228, 232. And then now I don't remember what your question was. Which one was better? Ask me again about which one was better on the Mad Max skin. 105 plus 10 is like a 105 LSA. No, those are not the same thing. You're just changing the intake center line. Richard, have you ever owned any 2G Eclipses? I haven't. I have done some chassis dyno testing on them, but we've not run one on the engine dyno, and I've never owned one. Interesting on the sloppy stage 3, much cheaper than a 459 or 469. Yeah, and if that was the case and the price was much less, then I would definitely pick that. Oh yeah, we forgot to talk about valve covers too. I just wanted to say that the Brian Tooley sent me some valve covers that have the coil mounts on them and stuff. The valve covers are really impressive. I like them. I think that they look great. But the reason that I like them on these test motors, and I will continue to run them now, is because they have the breather elements on them. They have the provisions for AN fittings, which now I can just run, because we run, I just vent hoses to atmosphere. And I've been doing it for a long time on one set of junkyard valve covers that I have that we just jammed a hose into and use those, because you have to have enough crankcase ventilation. Basically, you have to have a breather on there so that you don't build up crankcase pressure. And these allow me to do it with style, and they bolt on and off. I like the fact that I can take the valve cover on and off without removing the coil, so it helps with time, because I do obviously a lot of cam swaps. So that made a big difference. And then one of the things I also did along with the valve covers is I've now started putting the remote Mazir electric water pump on, so that I don't have to take the water pump off when I'm doing cam swaps. Now it's just the damper, which is cool. Do you have any video footage from the Killer Bee days? We didn't video any of the road racing stuff. I only have some in-car footage, and that's up of the Bonneville runs when I did the Civic Si stuff. Richard, can you pull one of my spark plug wires and autograph it for me? The Jerkflow Stage 1 chop just doesn't work anymore. Dyslexic and autistic. Nice. I had a 2000 Saturn SC1 when I was 17. Put the brake calipers on upside down. That was a $2,200 learning experience. Yeah. You should Eclipse project build, perhaps a budget build. All right, can you even buy Eclipses out there anymore? And the extra vents is really nice on the valve covers, especially because they aren't $500 to $600 valve covers like the rest. The guys from Summit actually sent me a set of valve covers too, and they're really nice, but they just don't have any provisions for coil brackets on them. And I don't like to remote mount the coils. Then you have to have custom wires and stuff too. And that's cool for a lot of guys that want to have. I could see why guys don't want the coil mounts on the valve covers, because just the open valve covers look really cool. And if you're going to remote your coils and then run the long wires to run those to the plugs and stuff, that works good. I just don't want to do that every time on the engine dyno. Is the sloppy best cam the 1.5? No, the sloppy best cam is actually slightly smaller than the 1.5, at least in intake duration. Mud truck 2.5 ton axles would power off idle to 6,500. Currently is kind of lazy until 5,000. Currently has a TSP Mad Max cam. That cam should not be too soft, but something like a Truck Norris cam would be much more responsive in that RPM range. Should really focus on getting my Hemi finish and running before I put any more money into my other beer-induced decisions. Those are not good decisions. BTR recommended an LS3 stage 4 V2 cam for my 5.3 233 250. Yeah, we've run that cam before. It works good. Decent. What would be a decent carb intake for an engine going into a Monte Carlo street racing? You're definitely going to want to run if you're going to run a carbureted intake, you're definitely going to want to run a single plane with that camshaft, because it's going to want to make power up high. So a Super Victor, if it's a cathedral port, actually a Super Victor, even if it's a LS3 headed, but it's not. If it's a 5.3, it's not going to be an LS3 headed one. But a Super Victor is the answer. I have a Killer Bee oil pan on my STI. Are you involved with them? No, I don't. We didn't do any Subaru stuff. Is porting a stock 5-through oil pump as well as shimming the stock relief spring a good idea or waste of time? Elm 7 with stock 862 heads. You don't need to do anything to the oil pump. It's fine. They have billet 4G63 blocks. Yeah, I'm not going to the billet blocks and that level of building. That this channel isn't that. Speaking about eclipses, I ran into a kid that won in the early Street Outlaws and an eclipse. All-wheel drive stuff is really nice for launch. Got to take apart and clean up a set of eagle heads, swap out the stage 3 cam for my custom stage 1, and make a notch in the intake. Is a Terminator a good EFI system? Yes, it is. The only thing I don't like about the Terminator, and they went through this at West Tech when I was there, is that the guy had put the wrong injectors in. He put low impedance injectors in, and unlike the HP and the Dominator, the Terminator wouldn't. The injector drivers won't accept the low impedance injectors. Need more JDM videos, yeah. Mostly the stuff that I've done a lot of Honda stuff, but I have some RB25 stuff coming up. We're just going to dig into that off idle power. Just paid $250 for junkyard valve covers. Oh, aluminum valve covers for BMW. All-wheel drive Cyclone was a whole shot beast. It is really good 0 to 60 time. Putting an Eagle Stroker 5-liter crank in my 4.6. We've built those before. And I think the guy that was asking about your single plane intake manifold, your single plane intake manifold is going to be way soft compared to any sort of long runner truck or fast or Trailblazer SS or those kinds of intakes. Maybe that's what the guys were talking about on your turbo combination. It's definitely going to hurt spool up, and it's going to make less power all the way up to 6,000 or more with a single plane intake compared to any of these longer runner EFI intake manifolds. But just don't use the word thoughts in any of your questions because that's too vague. My buddy has an 05 Pontiac Grand Prix GXP with an LS4. He wants to do a DOD delete and wants a choppy camper, doesn't care about power at all. BTR Truck Norris. Yeah, that would be a good choice for that. RB25 is a budget RB26. That's right. That's why I have it. And I bought it way back when it was prices were not high on them. Your Mark A just about to go through the Suez Canal. All right. Hopefully pirates won't get it. So you got negative temperatures. That's not good. KD. Had an aluminum radiator blowout on the turbo square body. How's my 0 to 60 time? And an 04 Silverado goes 6.9. Well, to give you an idea, that stock Cyclone was 4.3. Brendan, remind me again what you're trying to do, and I can give you a cam that will do that, or a cam that will kind of do that. Jimmy Oaks is going to get to comparing an RB30 with the 2JZ. A 2JZ turbo is not an impressive NA motor. If you take the turbo off a 2JZ turbo combination, that NA low compression motor doesn't really make very much power. But when they turn the boost up on it, it does. You see a huge difference in runner design regarding wet runner versus dry runner. It seems dry runner should be a little friendlier to bends. No fuel separation. I don't think that there's a difference. I mean, guys, when they're making manifolds, I've run, to give you an idea, we just ran carburetors on the blower stuff. And you know, you can run a dry manifold with fuel going through it, as we do with nitrous and water methanol and stuff. And and the surface tension and the shape of the runners are not going to be what keeps fuel in suspension. Even the negatives, I'm still daily driving the square body. Yeah, good. We sell sloppy stage 3 where I work. I usually try to talk people out of it between worrying about piston to valve clearance and how drivability in a 4853 is bigger than most stage 4 cams. It is. It's not. It's like we've talked about for an NA combination, especially a 48 or a 53. Most guys are going to be really unhappy if you put that in a 48 and go drive it around. Guys are going to be really unhappy with the response when they nail the throttle at 2,500 RPM. Pole needs more options. I'd pick the sloppy stage 2. You get to pick whatever you want. How is our poll, by the way? Wow, it's split. Would you pick the sloppy stage 3 cam over the sloppy stage 1.5 cam for your 5.3 liter? 51% saying no. The new Mustang 1400 Cobra Jet EV looks cool. I saw a video. I haven't seen that. 250,000 mile sloppy stage 3 cam. Does it become a sloppy stage 2.5 cam? Have you worn the lobes down on it? Is that what you're thinking? Currently 77 in Central Florida. Barely hit 60 degrees yesterday. Gotta love it. Richard, you did recommend the Truck Norris. I have the mud truck currently with the Mad Max cam. It seems lazy. Tell 5,000 in a perfect world. I need off idle the 6,500. I don't know. That's not a realistic RPM range, but you can pick something that does all that. A Truck Norris will make power up to 6,500. What I would want to know what your intake is, and if the thing seems lazy to 5,000 RPM with a 228 cam, I would look at the tune also. Sean, you want to do roundhouse kicking the rods out? I saw the Truck Norris shark attack meme that's going around where he attacks the shark. I tell you, an NA RB30 is a dog even with a double overhead cam swap. It won't beat, I'm assuming, a 2JZ, but we're talking about engines making about 150 at the wheels stock. A 3-liter RB with a 4-valve head on it, even with stock cams with a reasonable amount of compression, should be a pretty good motor. I mean, it should be a lot more than a L28. It should make a lot more power than an L28. And I've seen those things make 300. BTR needs to be a boost Lee cam. Yeah, that name has come up before. Let's see. Oh, 52%. Saw a big jump. What's the point of doing an RB or a 2J with no boost? The point is that the NA power determines the power that you make under boost. So whatever you're starting with, your ending point is going to be determined by what you're starting with, and then you just boost is just a multiplier. Remember when they were swapping L28s with triples into Skylines? Why would you replace an RB motor with an L series? An RB30 is a 7.5 to 1. That's really too low. Be cool to see an RX-7 rotary on the engine dyno. I agree. In fact, I was looking at RX-7s today on Marketplace. The Truck Norris by far outsells everything else, followed by the Chupacabra. I don't think the Chupacabra is even in the same league as the Truck Norris in terms of sales. I would bet that the Chupacabra is the #1 selling LS cam out there. MBSS intake, Mad Max cam, LY6 with mildly ported 862s, LY5 with 862s. Okay. Love to do something with an RB, but worry about parts availability. That's what everybody told me when I got this. I'm hoping that it runs okay. We're going to put some GM stuff on it anyways. Like to see the Renesas hybrid engine on the dyno. Yeah, I just want to see a 12A or 13B at this point. The NA versions of the RB and JZ engines sound pretty good with cams and ITBs, but really what doesn't sound better with cams and ITBs? That's true. Used to have a Supra, good on that small engine turbo stuff. Yeah, I mean, a boost is the great equalizer. How many bends does it take to kill the benefit of really long runners? If the bends are gentle, you'd be surprised how little bends actually do. If you look at if you look at a truck manifold, the way that everything goes up and bends and crosses over, people are way too worried about bends. They think that straight is the ideal thing. I don't think that's the case. Yeah, Rob Dobbs' channel, I follow him. He's got good stuff. So, Julius, you guys still have RB stuff there? RB25 is a, I got it because it was affordable. I was looking at RB26s, but they were way too much money even then. Luke's doing a cam swap is not hard. So if you could save the money and do it yourself, that would be money well saved. I think 4-cylinder turbo engines will take over instead of electric. Brendan, you should put a Truck Norris in it instead of that Mad Max cam. BTR Stage 4 versus a Summit Pro LS, Stage 4 versus a Stage 3 Sloppy, running 6.0, 823 heads, planning to do twin 66mm turbos, the 85 hoping to pull the 7500, Summit forge rods and pistons. I think with any of those cams, you're going to be able to do everything that those turbos will do. So the turbos are going to dictate the power. The change in power between those three cams is going to be inconsequential compared to the kind of power that you're going to make when you max the turbos out. Dumpster fire cam, good pickup for a 6-liter with a 7875. Let me know what the specs are on the dumpster fire cam. My suspicion is that it's too big for running a 7875. I would probably pick something smaller. Dumpster fire is a 224, 228. Okay. That's not too big, maybe, for a 6-liter. Maybe we could do a collaboration video with Rob. Yeah, I'd like to go over and meet him. Hey, he's got cool stuff there. Neighbor has a 91 Nissan hardbody with a 4-banger. To talk with him about an M90. Because M90 the world, right? I have a Gen 4 5.3 that needs pistons. Would you recommend going to a 5.7? On an NA motor, I definitely would do that. If it's going to be a boosted motor, I wouldn't do that. I could probably do it, just don't have much time. Yeah, that's another consideration if you're talking about do it, because it's going to be down for a day, probably. Should reach out to Rob. Yep. Surprised you haven't seen him at LS Fest. I've only been to 2 LS Fests. I've been to one LS Fest back east, and then one LS Fest west out here. Stuck on Boostly. That would be a grand slam marking wise. Yeah, the truck cam and the Truck Norris thing go together much better, because truck guys would be much more familiar and identify with Chuck Norris than they would be with Bruce Lee. But that's a cam name that we talked about a long time ago. How did you tune your Gen 6 big block twin turbo setup? We use a Holley if we run an EFI, we run a Holley HP or a Dominator. If it's carbureted, we run that CX Racing, or not CX Racing. Sorry, Kevin. Kevin at CSU, we run his carburetor on there. I would like to see a cam grind that fires 2 cylinders at the same time. Another cool idea would have the Su King on the video. He has a nice Datsun. Sun King. Figure out something for John Wayne. Yep. John Wayne's would be like the Iron Duke, right? I don't know that people now would identify with John Wayne. All the RB stuff is available, Julius. That's good. That's good to hear because I plan on doing some stuff with it. I mean, things like for the RB motor, aftermarket stuff like springs, that shouldn't be a problem. We should be able to source that here. I probably will make my own intake manifold, but they have those Grady style manifolds. Lots of the China copy stuff is available. Do you know if anyone has tried to install airflow check valve doors near the head intake flange interface to halt the pressure wave from running back up the runner when the valve closes? You actually don't want to do that. You don't want to limit the those reflected waves. The Lindsay Lohan cam, the Taylor Swift. GT40 head on a stock 5.8. Is there any power to be gained without changing anything else? Yes, the GT40 head flows a lot more than the E7 head does, and you'll pick up power even with a stock cam. The gains won't be as much as if you had a cammed 5.8, but there is power to be had there. The Swifty cam, yep. John Wick would be good. That's right, Michael. They would know who that is more than John Wayne. The Parabellum cam. I know they make a 4.7 swap for small block Chevy, but can't find anyone doing it in a big block. The comp has 4.7 swap cams for big blocks. In fact, the one cam, the Magic cam that I ran, and I have a video up on that big block cam, was a 4.7 swap cam. That didn't make it magic, nor did anything else. In fact, it was just a cam that Westec happened to have laying around that we ran. It was just a big cam, so it made good power. But because we had that cam and I installed it, and it made good power because it has lots of duration and has ample lift and all the things that needs to be a good cam. Then we just added boost to it and nitrous and turbos and all the stuff, and it works good. Baby Yoda cam, that's right. I don't know if my question went through. My cell was acting up. Will running water through the head on a filled water jacket block increase runtime on methanol? Yeah, water through the head will help. But you've filled the block all the way so that there's no water running through the block? This is not a daily driver, right? Yeah, the Duke would be problematic with the Iron Duke thing, though. The best millimeter cam. They sell a Trump thumper. Baba Yaga drones. Nice. Oh, gaskets and thermostats and stuff. Yeah. Does Cometic? Those guys have to make MLS gaskets for the RB series, right? Running a small block Chevy firing order on LS would be a neat setup. Oh, just for the sound, you mean? Schrodinger's cam bearings. That's right. From your experience, how long have solid roller lifters lasted on a street car? For big blocks and small blocks, I don't like running a solid roller on there. I think that they've EDM'd those to get oiling to them. And Comp now has lifters that you can use for that on a street application. Usually what happens is guys who have solid lifter cams and those are more cars and coffee kinds of things or street strip things that don't see a lot of miles. And I don't ever recommend guys running solid rollers for street applications. Probably get a stolen Russian tank for cheap. Yeah. Cometic has 7 MGTE MLS gaskets. Nice. The Trump thumper. Yeah. Well, the guys that have the flags in the back of their trucks, they're obviously going to buy that. And on that note, let's going to close out our poll at 54%. 54 saying no, they would not pick the stage 3. They would pick the smaller one. Can we dyno a Russian tank engine? Well, no, you wouldn't do that. You would LS swap the tank. Maintaining proper valve lash is more work than people want to do. Yeah, the maintenance is one thing, but just the longevity would be the thing that I would be concerned about. Street racers and Ford Fairmont station wagons. The Woodies were cool, though. A tank engine would be big, though. Yeah, if it's a diesel, if it's an old diesel engine, it would be a lot, unless it's a turbine. $125,000 on a R35. M1 is turbine. Yeah, you're not gonna find an M1 Abrams sitting somewhere. Yeah, BS, you can do whatever you want to the intake. Just make it really long. .42-inch runners. That's going to be a lot. that will be a bunch. And on that note, it is time to go. I will be back tonight. I got a video I'm working on today, which that should be up. And then we'll keep going. Pretty soon, I'm going to put the carbureted M90 stuff up, which worked really good. I will see you guys all later.